This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.
Let's talk a little football with the best in the business. That is Michelle Kaufman from the Miami Herald, covering all kinds of things, but including Inter Miami. And there
Juggling.
she
I'm
is.
juggling.
No, I know. Men's basketball, women's basketball, tennis, soccer. You're all over the place. You're like
All over the place.
You're like Sagua Fair. You're everywhere. That's how old I am. Anyway, all right.
Yes.
Young kids are going, who the hell is Sagua Fair?
Who? What?
What are you talking about, bro? All right. Walk me through this mess that is Inter. They frustrate me, Michelle. They just frustrate.
I know. My daughter says it's hard to be a fan of this team. It's like it's just hard. It's hard for the fans. It is, because you've got four of the best players of, this generation all playing together on one team, something we never thought we would see on an MLS team. If you were to told me 2 years ago that they would get Luis Suarez alone, that would have been a massive story, that they were going to get Sergio Busquets alone, or Busquets and Alba duo. Oh my God. But they've got Lionel Messi, best player in the
by
world.
the way, you and I used to get excited that we had Cerna and Pibe. Okay. All right. That's
right.
That was where we came from. Okay. We used to be excited about having nothing wrong with it. Pibe. I'm not trying to, but Pibe was obviously,
that was huge. That was huge to have it Pibe, to have Cerna, to have, whatever. So, and everyone got excited about Gonzalo Higuain a few years ago, so Pizarro, a guy from the Mexican national team is going to be on the team. So now they've got these four headliners, Mount Rushmore, I call them, whatever you want to call them, the Fab Four, Mount Rushmore. On paper you look and you say, oh, well, this team should be favored in every single game they play. Yes, they were playing Monterrey, is one of the top teams in Mexico. It was in Mexico. It's not going to be an easy game. They have a lot of national team players on their team. They have a very deep roster, which Miami does not. Miami's very top heavy. So, you've got these four big stars, but then on the bench, he didn't bring anyone off the bench, which I asked him after the game. I got one question on Zoom. They allowed one question from Zoom, and that was me. And my question was, why didn't you put anybody in? You didn't make any substitutions. You just left the same team out there, when they went down 2, when they went down 3, whatever. He said, well, the guys we had on the bench were all young and inexperienced. And at that point in the game, there was just no point to have them in there. The game was pretty much over when we went down by 2, because they already were down by 2, because away goals is the deciding factor in this tournament. So when they went down 2, they would have had to score 4 goals. And, basically they threw up their hands at that point and said, screw it, this game's over. Even then, considering especially the condition of that field, which was pieces of the field were flying all over the place. Hello. I would have taken out my most valuable, expensive players. Why? Not that I'm saying that you should just throw the poor kids out there to get injured. I'm not saying that. I am sort of saying that. But what I'm saying is the game is already lost at that point. Let the young guys go in and get the experience of playing in a hostile atmosphere like that, playing it. And, by keeping Messi, Busquets, Alba, Suarez out there running around when, pieces of field of turf were flying around, and they were like fixing, I've never seen in the middle of a game, a guy is running out there to fill in a hole with some sand. Who's ever seen that? So the field was terrible condition. You've got some of the most expensive players, who have ever played the game are out there playing, and he never put in any subs. And he said that the reason was the guys that were available were just very young and very inexperienced. And he said, I didn't want to subject them to the adverse conditions that were going on out there. So this is all a long answer to say, the team is top heavy. Yes, they've had injuries. That's true. They've had some injuries, but even the injuries are to some of the younger, not Christoph and Campana now has, this hamstring thing comes and goes, but the other guys who are injured, Kramashi is a teenager from Key Biscayne. Redondo is very good, but he's also young. So you've got a team that's top heavy with guys in their mid 30s who are coming from FC Barcelona. And then you've got a lot of the team are guys who are from the academy, from the Inter Miami Academy, or they're players who are young prospect from South America. So and it's interesting because at the end of last season, when we talked to Chris Henderson, he said that one of the goals for this season was to find some signings of players who were in the middle, in their late 20s, because mid to late 20s, because he said at that time, we have a lot of older players. And then we've got this group of academy kids who are promising and they've come along together as a group. And then you're going to have those older guys. But he said, what we really need are some guys in their late 20s. So they brought Gressel, is a guy who's one of those who's not super old, but not super young, has experience in MLS. And that I think that was a good signing. He has shown,
I like him.
He's had bad moments, but he's had some good moments too. But I think that they're missing players in that age and experience bracket. So you're going from, yes, you've got these four incredible players, but especially in the back,
Oh, defense. God, we are terrible.
The defense is bad. The defense has really struggled.
Horrible. And then here's the other thing, and it continues to be a problem. I get it. You're spending a lot of money on these players, but this whole money grab shit gets in the way of your decision making. You didn't have to play them on Saturday, and you still did. And you played them for a half, but they didn't need that half, dude. They're coming, especially Messi's coming back from injury. Keep them fresh. Maybe they would have had better legs on a Wednesday night.
No, they actually thought, I'll be honest with you, the strategy there was that he needed to play some because he had played nothing for almost a month, and they wanted him to get out there and at least get some legs under him and get some experience, huh?
He's practicing.
I know he's messy. I know he's messy. He can come in and he comes in and 12 minutes later scored against Colorado. So, he wasn't rusty. That was the fear, that he would be rusty against Monterrey. So they brought him in and he wanted to play, and they wanted him to play a little bit to get warmed up basically for what was to come at Monterrey. Yeah, that game was.
And from that team,
the first
I didn't
half,
see much from them. They really
the first half was not bad. The first half was not terrible. I mean, the first half they were moving the ball. He had a chance that he missed. It was not terrible in the first half. The Drake calendar mistake was horrible, and that then they go down automatically. Then you're coming from behind already. From the second half was really bad. The second half was bad. Yeah, it was. And then, the crowd was chanting Ronaldo. The crowd booed Messi every time he touched the ball, even though they lined the streets the day before. And I told this in my story. I wrote this in my story. The day before, the streets were lined with hundreds or even thousands, maybe, of fans waving at the team bus, taking pictures and everything. So, and there were some pink jerseys, sprinkled around in that stadium. And there were hundreds of people waiting outside the hotel for him. But when it came game time, they were rooting for Rayados. They were not rooting for Messi. They were booing Messi. And especially with the drama that had happened in the previous game where Messi got into it with their head coach and with their assistant coach, who called Messi El Enano, the dwarf, and also said that he had a devil face and that he had his fist up and that he looked like he wanted to punch him. So there was a heated argument that happened in the hallway after the first leg, a very heated argument that happened in the hallway, very narrow hallway at Chase Stadium in Fort Lauderdale, and Messi was front and center in that thing.
And they got fined for this, right?
And the team got fined. Yes, CONCACAF did an investigation. Everyone involved had to fill out questionnaires and whatever, and they investigated. And Inter Miami did get fined an undisclosed amount for not having proper security. They didn't fine, as far as we know, I mean, at least what CONCACAF announced, they didn't find any individual players. They didn't officially find the team for starting the altercation or for being involved in the argument. They fined the team for not securing the area adequately, because the thing is, that stadium, it's a temporary stadium, and they do the best they can with what they have. But it's a little tiny hallway for anyone who's been inside there or in the bowels of it. I have many, many, many times. The two locker rooms are directly across the hallway from each other.
Yep.
And the referee's room is also right there. Right there. So you've got the referee's room, and both teams' locker rooms are on the opposite sides of a hallway that's, not very wide. And you're coming into an international game that was pretty spicy, and a player from Miami got thrown off. Miami got 7 yellow cards in that game. Rayados got only 3. And their coach, this all started because their coach, Dano Ortiz, before that game, had said in a press gathering that basically insinuated that the officiating was going to be in Miami's favor because Messi is on the team and Messi generates revenue. So he said, we're going to do what we can on the field, but there's nothing we can do to control what's going to happen with the officiating and with what happens, because Messi is on that team, and that team is the money team, and we're not the money team. So anyway, when he says all that before the game, the feeling from Inter Miami side was that he was conditioning those refs. He was basically getting into the head and the ears of those refs. Hey, don't be giving them any favorable calls, okay? They're human. Those referees, I'm not saying if the calls were right or wrong. I'm saying the perception is when a coach is in the ear of the officials not in the officials, in a public statement, is questioning the integrity of the referees may subconsciously go out of their way to show that they are not pro Messi and pro Inter Miami by actually then in the end being heavily on the other side. Who knows? I don't know. I've never been a referee, but all of that came into play in that first game. Inter Miami's coach and players, and particularly Messi, being insulted and feeling that that coach was conditioning the refs to make calls against Messi's team, which he did, and throughout David Ortiz. And that, by the way, both of Monterrey's goals were scored when Miami was down a man. Okay, Miami was winning that game. Miami was beating Monterrey. When they went down to 10 players, that's when Monterrey scored the 2 goals. So Miami comes off that field lit, pissed off, mad. Messi more than anybody. He goes in there, and he and Tata and Suarez and Alba apparently just were fuming. And first they, questioned the referees who were standing right there in that little hallway. And then here comes Tano Ortiz and his assistant, the guy who had said all this stuff before the game. So they got into it. The whole entire series was wrought with, with high emotions, very high emotions. And so that game in Monterrey, once Miami went down by 2 goals, I think the Miami team was just like, blah, 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 this game sucks. We're out of here, whatever. And it was a shame. It was a shame because, I think they definitely could have competed better with that team. I don't know that they would have won and overcome the 2-goal deficit. But they did seem to kind of throw in the towel and ended up just, losing it in a bad way and losing their cool too. Alba got thrown out.
Yeah, the red card. Yeah, that was just
Alba's red card. That was just for pure frustration. You just shoved the guy. Pure frustration. Yeah. So now, looking ahead, which is what I'm doing now, writing my preview. So they flew straight from Mexico to Kansas City. They did not fly back to Miami. They went straight to Kansas City. The Kansas City game has been moved. They are playing at Arrowhead Stadium, which is not where they normally play. They have sold 70,000 tickets. 70,000 tickets. All of these people are expecting to see Messi. because 70,000 people bought tickets. And this would be the biggest crowd, that this team has played in front of. Peter Vermees, their coach, is really great. I mean, he had a great pregame press conference, which I will quote from extensively in my story. Just about
lifer, Peter Vermees, MLS lifer.
MLS lifer, MLS lifer, former U.S. national team player, MLS lifer. Also, apparently, according to what anyone can figure out, either the absolute first or one of the first American scouts ever to see Messi, ever to scout Messi. He was scouting for the U.S. under 17 team or under 19s or something. And he scouted Messi at 17 years old. And he's got some really interesting insights on Messi and how great he is and how impossible he is to stop. And when he was asked, what are you guys going to do? He said, every great coach in the world has tried to nullify this guy and no one has been able to, and I'm not going to be the first. He said, here's what we can try to do is reduce service to him. What you want to do is make sure that he doesn't get the ball, period. Once he's on the ball, he does things that no one else can do and no one else has done, and it's very difficult to stop. Not saying impossible, but so Peter Vermees is very excited for his team to have this opportunity to play at Arrowhead Stadium against the best player in the world. We don't know how many minutes Messi will play. The assumption is that he will play. We don't know how many minutes. They're not going to tell us that. But he seems to be healthy. Tata said that the injury was behind him. So he did announce that. And he played the other day, Monterrey. That was that game left a bitter taste. I am sure that these guys really want to go out there and win this game at Kansas City in front of 70,000 people. It's a way for them to very quickly, 3 days later, get the other thing in the rearview mirror, because they don't have to wait a whole week sitting around thinking about that horrible game against Monterrey. They've got a game now right away tomorrow, again in front of 70,000. It's not just a run of the mill game. It's a game that Kansas City is making a big event out of it. They actually are having a ceremony with the original team of Kansas City Wizards, because this game tomorrow lands on the 28th anniversary, I believe, of the very first Kansas City Wizards game. So they've packaged this all to be like a big ceremony, a big celebration of Kansas City Wizards, a big celebration of Sporting KC, and against Lionel Messi in front of 70,000 people. So it's going to be a big game. And for Inter Miami, I think it's a chance for them to try to get motivated and put Champions Cup behind them, because Champions Cup is in the toilet. They can flush that down the toilet. They're not winning it. They're not in the semifinals. They're out. They need to move on now and try to focus on winning what is left, which is the MLS season. And then, of course, MLS Cup and Leagues Cup, which are going to play in the summer. And then, of course, the guys like Messi that are going to play in Copa America from June to July, they're going to have their minds on that when it comes closer to that.
All right, we'll wrap it up with this. The good thing is the Jorge Mas rule is kicking in. So the MLS is noticing, if we open up the purse strings here, we bring in better talent, we might have like packed football stadiums now all over the league. So Jorge Mas has been wanting to influence the rules of the MLS, and I guess he's been successful.
Yeah, they've been having meetings about loosening, little by little. There are two camps. There are two camps among MLS ownership. There is the one camp, which Jorge Mas is definitely in and probably leading the charge. I believe he is, because, Jorge doesn't keep his feelings to himself. When he gets an idea or a thought, he's going to share it with the world. So he wants this league. He says, look, we are at a tipping point. We're at a point with Copa America's here coming up in 2 months. Then the Club Championship World Cup is here next summer. And then in 2026, the World Cup is going to be here. So the United States is going to be hosting three of the biggest soccer tournaments in the world over the next 3 years. When is a better time to elevate the league to the next level? The league has grown incredibly from the time that Big O, that you and I started covering this. This is a whole different league. The idea of 70,000 people at Arrowhead Stadium for an MLS game, it's just, this is, so we're, the league has grown to a new level. And now if they open the purse strings and relax some of the rules, they have too many rules and it's too complicated. Nobody understands it either. Nobody. The fans don't understand it. The reporters, I raise my hand, do not understand all the different, the GAM, the TAM, the this, the discovery player list, the first entry level list. Who can keep up? Who can keep up with all this crap? Okay, no one can keep up with it. So they need to simplify and become more flexible, period. They need flexibility and they need to simplify. If they do that, then the owners can decide themselves. And Peter Vermees actually said this too. The owners can decide themselves if they want to remain, the owners who want to remain the more conservative ones, who spend less money and develop their teams through the academy and through younger players, then fine. Do it that way. That's your way. You do it that way. And, look, Philadelphia has done it that way. That's a very good club. The Columbus Crew does a little of both, but the Columbus Crew is a great team. They just beat Tigres, by the way. I saw that Tata was complaining after that, because of the rules, because of the roster rules, Inter Miami, that's one of the reasons that they were hand-tied. No, I mean, I agree that they need to change the rules, but Columbus Crew beat Tigres in Mexico the night before in the city of Monterrey, okay? And they did it without Messi.
They won Leagues Cup last year, so give me a break. Come on, enough already with that.
No whining, enough whining, enough complaining, enough excuses. But anyway, so there are two camps, and I do think there will be the owners who are still more conservative and do it that way. And then there will be the Jorge Mas group of owners who say, I'm opening up my checkbook right now. Let's get the best players we can get. Let's see what we can do with this and try to compete not only with the top European teams as far as luring players, but also with Mexico and also with Saudi Arabia. Now you've got Saudi Arabia, an emerging league that is paying tons of money to get some really big names over there. And in MLS has to compete with these leagues around the world. So it'll be interesting to see if the relaxing of the rules and the opening of the checkbooks will make a big change.
Follow her on Twitter at Kauf Sports. Catch her work there at the Miami Herald, as always, so you can keep up with everything Inter Miami. Michelle, as always, thank you for taking the time. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the football.
All right, you too. Enjoy the game. Take care. We'll see what happens. Bye-bye.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. She is the best. Appreciate it, as always, getting it done. Michelle Kaufman, the lady of football.
This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.